The Schengen zone? Yes. Do you know what it is? No, not at all.
I can travel just with my identity card. My sister lives abroad, so it's great. I'm in favour of the Schengen agreement.
What is it? It's a bad thing.
I think it's great that the borders should be open, just the same way I can drive from California to New York without showing my identity to the police. I think I should be able to drive from one country in Europe to another.
Schengen? How do you spell it?
So Schengen, loved, hated, or completely unknown. But for some 400 million Europeans, it means that they don't need to pack a passport for tourists and business people alike when travelling across the 26-nation zone. That's because it's an area free of internal border controls. For many, Schengen is considered the glue that keeps Europe together. But many fear it's coming unstuck. This report from Michel Santos.
Schengen is one of the tangible symbols of European unity, but there are fears it's being eroded. Europe without internal borders began 27 years ago with Benelux, France and Germany. Now there are 26 countries in the Schengen zone, but some member states are demanding more border controls. A row between Italy and France hit the headlines last year after the arrival of several thousand refugees on Italian shores in the wake of the Arab Spring. With little apparent support from the EU member states, Rome issued the refugees with short-term residence permits. Since most of them were Tunisian, many went to join relatives in France. Paris reacted by temporarily intensifying border checks and even blocking trains at the border. In April this year, France and Germany discussed the possibility of reinstating border checks unilaterally. Later, EU interior ministers infuriated the European Parliament by potentially excluding it from making decisions on how border rules are applied. MEP Carlos Coelho says the Council's decision aimed to enable governments to do what they like at their borders.
Maintaining this system, they're covering themselves and irregularities at borders, so they never come to light. They're never corrected.
But even before this, people have been chipping away at the Schengen Treaty. For example, Euronews has sight of a document in which Czech companies are denouncing systematic German border police controls. One company says 64% of its buses are checked by authorities.
We are talking about several member states, but other member states could make the negative coalition even bigger, and then the freedom of movement might clearly be endangered.
Cyprus has just taken over the rotating presidency of the EU.
With the economic and migration crisis, some member states are accused of lacking solidarity. Also, Schengen highlights lack of confidence in the management of external borders. The Cyprus presidency has to manage this, as well as the row between EU institutions.
I'm joined on the front line to discuss the thorny issue of Schengen with a woman who's at the very heart of this debate, Cecilia Malmström, who's EU Commissioner for Home Affairs, and Andreas Mavroyiannis, who's got the dossier high on his to-do list, and he is Deputy Minister of European Affairs of Cyprus. Many thanks for joining us. Now, this is a very hot topic at the moment. People throwing into question the very principle of passport-free travel. What's at stake here?
Well, the whole Schengen could be at stake because, as the movie showed, Schengen is something, it's the most tangible success of the European Union for the ordinary citizens. You can actually travel without a passport from Lapland in Finland to Malta without showing your passport. And of course, this is something that should not be taken for granted. We have to protect it. And if that is put into question, there's a whole trust that is put into question, and that could potentially jeopardize the whole freedom of traveling, and that would be disastrous for the European Union.
Well, you described this as, well, which is your dossier now, as a toxic asset. Now, they're pretty strong words. Why is it a toxic asset?
No, it's not the whole issue of Schengen, which is a toxic asset. I was referring just to the row between the European Parliament and the Council. And it's a toxic asset in our relationship. And we need to ensure that this mutual trust and confidence, which is at the base of this system, is there. and it is enhanced in order to allow the system not only to remain in place, but to achieve even better results for the benefit of the European citizens.
So, well, you've both mentioned the issue of trust, and that seems to be fundamental to this, and probably also why governments are saying, well, no, we don't trust what's going on with Schengen at the moment, and we want to have the sovereign right to unilaterally impose border checks. Isn't that fair enough, given the problems you're aware of at the EU's external borders?
Well, member states are, of course, sovereign over their borders, but Schengen is a joint accomplishment. So if one member state wants to reinstall a border between another member state, it becomes a European problem. And it could be cases where that has to happen, exceptional cases. If there is a terrorist attack, you might need to close your borders for a temporary moment or something. Or there could be serious deficiencies in one country. But what we must have, as the Minister said, is very clear rules on when can that happen. Because also today we see a lot of populist movements in Europe. We see a lot of mistrust. We see a lot of nationalism. And we don't want to have Schengen used as a domestic tool, manipulating, closing borders, opening them like this, because this is something that is really there for the European citizens.
As you've mentioned the issue of populism, I would like you to listen to this soundbite from Auke Zylstra, who is from the Dutch right-wing Freedom Party.
Schengen is the oorzaak van de massale verplaatsing.
Schengen is the cause of a massive movement in crime, and now we have to try to tackle this, and the Parliament has to find a solution. We have to restore frontier checks, and our borders have to be safeguarded. Frontier checks are disappearing because of naive idealism. This will not bring Europe together, but drive it apart.
So, do you think that the Schengen debate is being taken over, as the Commissioner mentioned, by populist rhetoric?
Yes, I fear this is the case, and we are going through a most unfortunate amalgamation between the freedom of movement of the European citizens, the illegal migration, the xenophobic phenomena, and all other phenomena around the current economic and social crisis, and they are exploited in order to promote populist agendas.
So how do you combat this?
Well, the solution is certainly not closing the borders. Nobody denies that we have a problem with cross-border crime, and it is unfortunately increasing. When borders disappear, 99% take advantage of it. Honest people, but also criminals take advantage of it. The solution is reinforced police cooperation, reinforced cooperation at customs, at intelligence, at law enforcement authorities all over Europe. You can do targeted checks at the borders if you have intelligence showing that there are suspicions and so on, but you cannot systematically check people who cross a border, because that would be against Schengen.
What about the new members who would like to become members of Schengen, Cyprus included? But I think Bulgaria and Romania have basically met the technical requirements, but they're not being allowed to enter yet. Why is that?
Well, very much because of the lack of trust. I think Romania and Bulgaria do meet all the technical criteria, and that has also been acknowledged by all the ministers in the European Union, and the Commission think that they are now ready to enter. But it is a decision that has to be taken unanimously by the member states, and that unanimity is not there yet.
So in terms of migration, criminality, we're also needing more solidarity amongst EU member states to help each other combating this. And this is something that keeps coming up. There is a lack of solidarity at EU level at the moment. Do you think that could in the end spell the demise of Schengen, this lack of solidarity? Is that the main problem?
I wouldn't say this is the main problem, but yes, there is a problem. We need to control better our external borders. We need to find also practical expressions of solidarity among member states, because some member states that are on the front line, including mine, sometimes they receive disproportionate pressure, if you like. But we need to find ways to solve this. But it shouldn't be confused with the freedom of movement within the European Union. It's a different issue.
It's a different issue, but the external borders are the guardians in some respects of Schengen.
It's a prerequisite in order to have Schengen applying internally. You need to control the external borders, of course.
Do you think that Cyprus has the clout to be able to really push this forward and hopefully, reach a solution to this in the 6 months?
I don't see this as a very big problem. There is an issue between the European Parliament and the Council. There is an issue which was mentioned in the reportage before, that yes, we need to have a clearer understanding on how, when, under what conditions and what mechanisms we use in order to introduce temporary controls in the Schengen, within the Schengen area. There is an issue there, but I mean, we're working on it. I'm not pessimistic.
Okay. Not pessimistic. What about yourself? Do you think that in 20 years' time Schengen will exist as it is today?
Well, I am an optimist as well. You have to be in this. And there are issues left. There are disagreements. But maybe the positive aspect of it is that it has really created a debate. And everybody has realized what we are putting at stake. So hopefully we can sit together and identify ways to move forward so we can strengthen Schengen and to make it a really something that is sustainable also in 20 years, because there is so much we will lose if we don't do this, and I think we can do it.
I'd like to thank you both for joining us on the front line. That was a very interesting debate. And beyond the politics, whether Schengen is looking shaky or not, it's something that Europeans appreciate and enjoy. A recent poll showed that nearly 70% of people believe Schengen is important. If you're going away in Europe, we'd like to hear about your experiences. What do you think about Schengen? Does the passport-free zone really make your journey easier? Or were there border checks? Were some people singled out? We're interested. Tweet us about it. In the meantime, thanks for joining us on The Front Line.